Goldfinger. He's the man with the Midas touch.
Do you expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to fly.
That's one of the best intros ever.
I love to take credit for it, but I just will because
It's awesome.
Whatever. Mr. Goldfinger, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Very well,
Great.
very well. How's the drive-in?
Driving was fine.
Yeah?
Beautiful. No issues. Yeah.
No problems. Just a nice, quiet drive and
Kind of quiet.
kind of quiet.
People yelling about the Blue Jays, the Pete's, and all sorts of things. Listen to you guys.
Oh, I'm sorry. The Blue Jays. You mentioned the Blue Jays in there. Okay, hang on. We gotta. I made a rule. If anybody mentions the Blue Jays, I got to play that now.
Blue Jays, bah humbug. There you go. That's my rule.
You're not a season ticket holder, are you?
I don't know. Look, I love that people love baseball, and baseball's great, and it reminds us of the summer and the nice days, but the Blue Jays are going to be perpetually in third or fourth place in the AL East for years to come. That's my hot take.
Years to come.
Years to come.
Well, hold on a minute here now. I have to counter that only in the I don't disagree with you about where they're going to end up, but I'm very, very excited about the season, and two words come to mind: no expectations. So it's a young team. I'm excited to see young players, Vladdy Guerrero, Bichette. So yeah, I mean, I'm a little disappointed because you're absolutely right. They're not going to get a sniff for a few years anyway. But we get to see those young players that everybody's talking about. So
If they make some noise, then they make some noise, right?
They're not making any
They
noise.
don't make noise.
Anytime you're paying a player or a team $10 million, right? The Kendry Morales situation.
Yeah.
So they're dumping that contract. So he's getting paid $12 million this year, and I think that the Jays are paying $10 million of that
Yeah.
contract.
Yeah.
So they're paying $10 million to a guy to hit home runs against them. That makes zero sense to me. I know that they want to open up a one roster spot, but is that one roster spot really going to make or break the team?
Well, and again, it's a DH position too, right? So,
but you will notice they didn't trade Morales within the division either. So they traded him outside of the division. So they're not.
You mean like
they're not-
Tulowitzki going to the Yankees, and they still have to pay for him to go play for the Yankees? I mean, there's some things that are questionable, but you know what? Sports is not meant to. Well, okay, it's meant to infuriate us. What am I talking about? I'm a longtime Leaf fan.
Let's talk Raptors.
Yeah, there we go. Let's talk some Raptors. I mean, and you talk about rebuild stages. Should we, in your guesstimation, should we appreciate what we have now because what we're going to have tomorrow probably won't even touch what we have today with the Raptors?
With the Raptors, this is the golden age of Toronto Raptor basketball. You should enjoy every dribble, every step of the way. It's been a great run, and I hope it continues for years to come. I hope Kawhi resigns. I hope the Raptors make it to the final. All good things for the Raptors, and I hope that there are no injuries between tonight's game against the Knicks up to the playoffs, which are in a few weeks.
When you look at the remainder of the season, obviously we've discussed it off the top, and probably won't touch Milwaukee at this point.
No.
But are you still confident or comfortable where they are in the standings right now?
Yeah, finish in second and just be healthy. That's it. I love watching Raptor basketball games, but I've had a lot of problems watching them of late just because I'm worried about injury and I want them to be healthy. So if you look at Milwaukee's situation, they recently lost Mirotic a few weeks with a broken thumb. Brogdon is out with a leg problem or a knee problem. He'll be back maybe second round of the playoffs. Dante DiVincenzo, a backup point guard, is out, and Pau Gasol is out. So they've been healthy all year, except for the last few weeks they ran into the injury bug, which will impact them come playoff time.
And we had a scare, of course, of our own with Lowry a couple of weeks ago, right?
Lowry's always out with something. Bad back, knee, this,
But still,
that.
right?
I'm not so worried about
Broken
Lowry.
heart.
Yeah, I get more worried about the other guys. Lowry, he's a gamer. I know he'll be there.
We were also talking about MVPs. And I want to get this conversation out of the way with you as well, because I know that you're not just a Raptors fan, but you like watching basketball, and you've got a special appreciation for many players around the league. But when it comes down to MVP, this race is going to get pretty tight down the stretch, I think.
Yeah, I think it's between Giannis on the Bucks and Harden on the Rockets. The argument can be made either way. I'm leaning more towards Harden of the Rockets because his team has been plagued with the injury bug. Chris Paul was out for a while. Clint Capella was out for a while. Those are big hits, but even without those pieces, Harden was able to make it work, and he's having a real historic season. Whereas Giannis, he's the most dominant player in the league. I think he's been the best player and most consistent player in the league. But his team around him, they've all been healthy. They've all been there for the majority of the season. That's why I think Harden's season is more spectacular and is more worthy of the MVP.
Carrying the team on his back sort of mentality,
Correct.
right? Yeah.
Correct.
Because it obviously comes down to a lot more than just points and wins and losses. It comes down to the overall what kind of a contribution did you make to this organization?
Who's the most valuable? And also Harden's team on the Rockets, you only have one All-Star on that team. In Harden on the Bucks, you have two All-Stars in Middleton and Giannis. So if you take off the one All-Star in Harden, they just don't work anymore. But if you take off Giannis, they might be able to squeak out a few wins here or there with Middleton and given their system that they play.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, yeah.
I was just going to ask, when we look at the Raptors' potential playoff run, or however long that is, Brian, how important is a good run vis-a-vis Kawhi staying with the Raptors next year?
Bold prediction, hot take. If the Raptors fizzle out in the playoffs, Kawhi's out of here. If the Raptors have an admirable showing, i.e. make it to an Eastern Conference final or an NBA final, I think he's sticking around.
One of the finals or the final? Which one do you think?
I think in an Eastern Conference final, if they lose dramatically in 7, he's still going to stick around. If they fizzle out in 4 or 5, he's out of here.
Yeah,
in an Eastern Conference final. If they have a good showing in the Eastern Conference final and there's some heart and some compete, and they actually advance to an NBA final, I think he's got to stick around. He would get paid more. Toronto can offer him more money than any other team, and he would be ridiculed if he left a team that was a finalist or on the verge of making the finals to go to a team that was in a rebuild or just trying to start something from the ground up.
I've just found it fascinating all season, and I don't watch, admittedly, as many games as you do, Brian, but what I do see is that Kawhi has been able to remain, the stoic Kawhi that he's been all season. There's nothing to indicate that he's not tipping his hand at all. He's leaving the door open, but even in his words and his expressions and his emotions, he's not showing us anything either way.
He would make an excellent poker player.
He absolutely would.
Does that take away, though, something from the team dynamic, do you think? Because you have someone that just seems so... He's a good player, and I won't ever just take that away. But again, it's just like you're looking for something a little bit more, some more charisma, and you don't have it.
He seems detached.
Does it seem like, does it take away, do you think, from the team aspect?
I think it would, based on what we see on the surface, but reading in between the lines, I think that his teammates really like him. And I think that he shows a bit more personality behind closed doors than he would to the media. That's just my take on it. I agree with you. If he's that stoic in the locker room, that's not the sort of guy you want to be around.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's that sort of guy behind closed doors.
Brian Goldfinger's here from Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. We'll get into your latest blog, by the way, some changes to the funding system. And I know that you took some aim at that, but we'll talk about that coming up in a bit. You and I chatted a couple days ago as well about some business. But one of the things you had talked about, of course, was the Pete's too. So obviously keeping a close eye on what's going on with the maroon and white. And what's your take on this, how this series has played out so far between the Pete's and Generals?
Whenever I watch the Pete's play the Generals, I feel like all the Pete's players are 5'8" or 5'10" and weigh like 180 pounds soaking wet, and all the Generals players look between 6'2" to 6'6".
David Goliath, right?
Yeah, that's just how I feel. I feel like every Pete's guy is like Jonathan Ang, if you remember him, just speedy, small guy.
Go with Jonathan A, not Jonathan Tanous. He was a little bit smaller.
Yeah, like that's just how I feel. And I hope they get it. I hope the Pete's get some solid goaltending. I think they'll really need that to compete, and I hope the home crowd is behind them, and we're able to make it even more of a series, because if they go down, they'll have a tough time winning in Oshawa. So tonight's game is very important.
And the one thing I kept saying about the series, and I repeat it over and over again, is the fact that you have 3,500 plus inside the Memorial Center. You've got about 4,000 or 5,000 in Oshawa. This is what a playoff series is all about.
That's
I mean,
great. When
you've got Boston and Toronto playing in the NHL playoffs, you've got packed barns. It's a nice little rivalry that's not only spruced up in each of those buildings, but also in this building here too, because I just saw that stupid Bruins fan walk past my office. But with that though, I mean, this is what it's supposed to be. That's the one thing I think that is missing in junior hockey playoffs in the OHL specifically, is that you'll watch the games, but you're not passionate behind it. But when you have an Oshawa Peterborough playoff matchup, there's passion behind it.
Everything's ramped up for sure.
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, that's why I like it. And again, you got packed buildings. It just creates that playoff excitement that I think that the OHL really needs.
It's a big reason why I support the OHL. There's nothing like it. It's a hard championship to win. The Memorial Cup, one of the hardest cups in all sports to win, because you got to go through so many steps and levels. And, the passion is there because some of these players can be playing at the next level next year. Some of these players might not be playing any hockey next year.
Yeah.
And that last hurrah and seeing those veterans give it that last hurrah and give it their all, there's nothing like it on that level.
A couple other series that have been pretty good to watch. Well, not so much because, I mean, they've been pretty much blowouts at this point. But, again, for the rivalry aspects, you got Kitchener-Guelph. That's a good one. Windsor-London, too, is another one.
Windsor-London is a fun one, too.
It's a fun one, too. And even Sault Ste. Marie and Sound have sort of picked up their pace as being a bit of a rivalry going on there because they played each other so much in the postseason, too.
It's nice when everyone complains about the high price of professional NHL tickets or not being able to make it to a games or even game times because they go so long.
Yeah.
Catching, a matinee in the OHL, whatever city you're in, and paying the ticket prices, which remain very reasonable. The concession prices, people may complain, but at the end of the day, they're reasonable when you compare to going into a professional barn. It's great fun, and it's great to see, and it's very accessible for everyone across the province.
Well, going to the game with Judy, the Leaf game, going to the Leaf game with her, and I bought, a water, a beer for myself, a nice little Coors Light, and a bag of popcorn. That cost me like $40.
You took out a mortgage.
I did. Yeah. So, I mean, come on now. Let's settle down. What are we doing? But, a great series, and Game 4 goes tonight. Should be a packed crowd. Another bus going down to Oshawa for Saturday for Game 5 as well. So, certainly a lot of hype and excitement. It's Pete's playoff fever here on Extra 9.5. We got Game 4 coming up tonight right after the ball game here on Extra 9.5. I want to get into what you were chatting about online on your blog yesterday. Of course, you can find that online. And some changes to the fee structure when it comes to a court case.
Right. So a lot of lawyers and even politicians discuss the concept of access to justice. That means that it doesn't matter if you're the richest person in the world or the poorest person, you'll have equal access to the courts. The cost for filing a trial record, meaning at the end of the case, in order to set a matter down for trial, it used to be $337. It got increased to $405, and recently the Ontario government announced an increase of the fees from $405, they've doubled it, to $810. So that increase is astronomical. That doesn't take into consideration the court filing fee for issuing a statement of claim, which is $220, which is going up to, I think, to $239. It doesn't take into consideration the cost of bringing any motions, which is going up from $169 to I think it's $169. It doesn't take into consideration the cost of filing any summonses. It doesn't take into consideration the cost of paying a lawyer who may not be a lawyer like me who takes it on a contingency fee basis. It doesn't take into consideration the cost of any medical records, hospital records, expert reports, etc. At the end of the day, if you can't find a lawyer who takes on the case on a contingency fee basis, who's able to flip the bill for these court filing fees that should give all Ontarians access, you won't have access to courts. You won't have access to justice. So it's an easy concept for lawyers and politicians and bureaucrats to talk about, but in practice, we're doing the exact opposite, and we're creating more and more barriers for common people to get access to our courtrooms.
Is this a way to sort of slow down the court process or make it more difficult? What do we think this is?
It's a very astute observation. The last paragraph of my blog at goldfingerlaw.com, I play devil's advocate, and I say, well, maybe people aren't really into access to justice, and it's just a way to look altruistic. Maybe it's just a way to look very high and mighty. And the reality is, we don't want people going to courts. We don't want people, clogging up the court system, and that the court system should be reserved for very rich and wealthy individuals and very large corporations who have the means to fight battles, as opposed to perhaps the little guy, the Davids of the world versus the Goliaths. And that's the unfortunate part.
Have we gotten to because we can probably joke about, where everything, something happens, oh, that's a lawsuit, that's a lot. And then we speak more about that, of course, down south of the border where, it just seems that a lot of quote-unquote frivolous lawsuits are being brought before the courts on a regular basis, but are we getting that same sort of aspect here in Canada as well, where there's a lot of quote-unquote frivolous lawsuits being brought forward?
I wouldn't say that they're necessarily frivolous. I don't see that trend because the laws in Ontario and the common laws of Canada, for that matter, are very different than the laws in the United States. In Canada, I'll give you an example. There is a cap from coast to coast, from Halifax to Vancouver, for general damages on pain and suffering. It sits at about $373,000, give or take, given inflation. In many parts of the United States, those caps may not exist, or those caps on general damages may be significantly higher. So we have that uniform cap, and I think that really kind of curbs things. Now, that cap hasn't really been touched very much, and I think that there needs to be some movement on that cap. But that's just one of the common threads that we see across Canada, why Canada isn't like the United States in that regard.
So nothing coming from the provincial government. These fees are being hiked up, but no knowledge as to why. Nothing's been explained.
There was no consultation on it. They just said April 1st, like a cruel April Fool's joke, we're jacking up your court filing fees in civil courts. I imagine that there is some rationale behind that, which may include, we just don't have the money or the resources, which is fair, but they should certainly have some consultation and consult kind of the parties who have interests, the lawyers and the people of Ontario. I don't think that was done, or if it was done, it was not done adequately. And increasing a trial record, doubling that cost from $405 to $810 is astronomical, in my opinion.
When we look at lawyers who take cases on a contingency basis, as you mentioned, will this increase the number of lawyers that will do that, just based on the fact that they have to have clients and they have to get them into the courtroom, so they got to do everything they can to help them?
I don't know, because there are very few areas of the law where lawyers practice regularly, as say as a personal injury lawyer, on a contingency. In criminal law, that doesn't exist. You're not allowed to do it. In family law, I don't know if you're allowed to do it, but you don't see it. In estate law, you don't see it. In some matters of commercial litigation where Company A is suing Company B, sometimes you see it. Very few cases, but more often than not, you don't. Mm-hmm. In employment law, you see it more frequently. Sometimes you don't see it. It's only personal injury law that you see lawyers routinely take cases on a contingency fee basis because their clients are too injured. They can't work, and because they can't work, they can't earn money. Because they can't earn money, they can't afford to pay a lawyer, let alone to pay common bills, rent, food, etc. Mm-hmm. I don't think it'll increase the number of contingency fee lawyers out there, because the lawyers who currently do it are kind of set in their ways. And if they have a client with deep pockets, they're going to go after those deep pockets to help fund the litigation. It's very challenging. And also the lawyer has to be darn good at their job, because if they're not good at their job, they're not going to win money for their clients. Yep. And if they don't win money for their clients, they're not getting paid. And if they're not getting paid, they can't pay their employees, they can't pay their rent. They're going to be out of business very soon.
Brian Goldfinger from Goldfinger Personal Injury Law. How can people find you, my friend?
Certainly visit the website, goldfingerlaw.com, or you can always email me at Brian, BRIAN, at goldfingerlaw.com.
And you can flood his inbox with your pick for the NBA MVP.
Go for it.
There you go. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Brian.